Welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, December 20th through Sunday, December 26th. This week we have, Venus has just turned retrograde on Sunday, so we're kind of freshly into this new transit of Venus going retrograde. So reorganizing and revisiting how we approach our relationships and our finances, basically reapproaching our desires and whatever supports us. So a lot of that is financial, but it also applies to our romantic or our relationships as well. We are rethinking how we support ourselves in those circumstances. There's a lot of transformation there. Venus will also conjoin Pluto this week, so there's big transformation in those areas as well. And we have a third quarter moon shaking things up a little bit. We also have Saturn squaring Uranus, so that's a big deal. It's always a big deal when the farther outer planets, the slower planets, aspect one another. There's major changes that center around aspects such as this. And probably the biggest thing this week is the sun entering Capricorn. And I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. So that is definitely impactful. It's always impacting when the sun enters a new sign. It's sort of a new, we sometimes call it a season in astrology, so the Capricorn season in a way. That does definitely change the vibe of things, changes the themes that we're exploring. But this is a particularly impacting and interesting new sign that the sun is entering, just because when the sun does and leave Sagittarius and enter Capricorn, it it crosses that cusp, and so that signifies to us in the northern hemisphere the winter solstice. So the darkest day of the year is always the first day of Capricorn, and it's also the first day of winter. And I just wanted to visit that a little bit. So we're also thinking about Christmas this week, many of us in the northern hemisphere, I guess in Western society anyway. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So part of the origin of Christmas had very much to do with the winter solstice because it is centered around that time. And some people say it has um, connections to Christianity and Jesus as well. That the winter solstice, that the sun um, died or set for these 3 days of darkness, the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, usually, generally speaking, are the three darkest days of the year. But then afterward, the sun comes back, it arises again because gradually this marks the beginning of longer days, more the sunshine returning to the earth. So this has a lot of effects, especially in the northern latitudes where the sun's energy was so needed and it was so important for agriculture that it can be very dark. So it can be sort of depressing, but we would have the lights around Christmas. This tradition of setting lights to things to remind us that although it is the darkest time of the year, it also marks the returning of the light. That the light is gradually coming back to us. And this is also very integral to the themes of Capricorn. Capricorn can be a very pessimistic, stoic sign. It can seem very cynical and maybe even like negative in that way. But at the same time, it's an optimist in the future. It projects things into the future. Everything's all about the future with Capricorn. It's always planning ahead. And that's because winter, especially the beginning of winter, is a dream time. You're not the most active at that time. Oftentimes, for us at this time in the northern hemisphere and winter, we might feel slow or sluggish, especially in the northern latitudes. There's a hibernation period. And that's because we're not outwardly directly manifesting things at this time. It's a time of rest and reflection, more so. And it's a time of it's almost like a dream time. And whatever we're dreaming about and desiring will ultimately come about in the spring with the beginning of Aries. But right now, Capricorn really exemplifies this, that it's working toward the future. It's setting things up for much long-term desires or ambitions, aspirations. And again, you can just see this with the sun's light that it's not light right now. It's very dark. The energy is just not there, but it will be basically. So that's generally where the focus is. I just wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit. But anyway, let's go into the weekly forecast here. So we start out on Monday, December 20th with the moon in Cancer. Sun is at the very end of Sagittarius. So just generally speaking, with the moon in Cancer, we are feeling very emotional, very aware of our emotions, maybe a little bit defensive. I do think this is a nice mix, though. We've got the Sun still in the fiery sign of Sagittarius. We've got Mercury and Venus in Capricorn, Moon in Cancer. So we are definitely thinking about the future and becoming kind of focused on our goals and ambitions, taking things maybe a little bit seriously with Mercury in Capricorn. But we're still a little bit lighthearted and definitely feeling like the holiday vibe with the Sun in Sagittarius. And then Moon in Cancer just brings a sort of emotional sensitivity to the table. We're feeling maybe more emotionally expressive. And generally at this time, we're wanting to spend time with people that are familiar to us. So, close family or friends is kind of what Cancer is all about. So that's generally where the focus is for all of us starting on Monday. Monday, we do have one aspect. We have Mercury at 10 degrees. Well, actually, so later in the day, it will be at 11 degrees Capricorn. And it does make a trine to Uranus at 11 degrees Taurus. Now, generally speaking, any type of Mercury Uranus aspect, especially a trine like this, is really ideal for awakening. So, shifts in consciousness, awakening, uncovering truths, maybe just kind of figuring things out on an intuitive level, or coming across information that really changes the game for you. And this can be sometimes discomforting because it requires change, uncovering greater awareness or consciousness, uncovering greater truth is disruptive at times. Uranus is disruptive. The information that this type of aspect would bring would be disruptive, but it's necessary disruption, assuming that we want to improve ourselves and our lives and become more aware and more conscious. Um, and this is a trine. Trines are pretty easy, pretty relaxed, pretty strong. Probably the easiest aspect. So this won't be too much of a rude awakening, but it is an excellent aspect for learning, figuring things out, etc. And what we may be applying this to will be earthy in nature. This is an earth aspect. Mercury's in Capricorn, Uranus is in Taurus, so we're thinking about sort of physical natures at this time, thinking about money, resources, how we support ourselves. Maybe it's in your time management or your management of money or your management of your energy. That's a resource as well. Anything of that nature. It also could have to do with just long-term ambitions or plans or goals. All this is really integral to Capricorn, as I've discussed here. And so this is kind of the area where there will be this maybe disruption through new information coming across to us. And this will be especially affecting people with major planets in Capricorn or Taurus, but for the rest of us as well, we will also be experiencing this in our own way. Let's go forward to Tuesday, December 21st. Now, this is the winter solstice. It's the first day of winter. It's also the first day of Capricorn. So there is this major shift, and I think this is one of the two potentially most difficult shifts in astrology. The other one, in case you're interested, is going from Leo to Virgo, and this is just my own personal opinion, but there is such a stark change when we go from a fire sign to an earth sign. Sagittarius in particular is such a happy-go-lucky time. This is, for many of us, a time that's marked by holidays. Pretty much, it almost fits pretty neatly between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Not exactly, but so for those of us in the West or in America, it is a time of holidays. Basically, we're centered around all these holidays and around coming together, a time of abundance and gift giving. So all this is very Sagittarian. So it is very jovial, if you will, very jolly, very fun, happy time, which is kind of interesting because it's such a dark time, literally dark, especially in the northern latitudes. But at the same time, it's such a merry time, I guess, if you will. But this changes dramatically when the sun enters Capricorn just before Christmas. So it does make things much heavier. Sagittarius is so spontaneous and so adventurous and fun, and then we go to Capricorn, which nothing against people who have Capricorn placements. Capricorn's a lovely sign. It's just much more disciplined and serious in its approach than Sagittarius is. It's much more deliberate and it just takes things more seriously. It puts more time and deliberation into what it does. So when the sun enters Capricorn, we all experience this, and we all experience that darkness that comes with the very beginning of winter. So it can be a difficult time. It can be challenging, but again, it's basically asking us to become better, to grow. And of course, that's challenging and uncomfortable at the time, but it's necessary if we wish to evolve. It's also, if we think about the the natural cycles again of life, then you're sort of planting seeds or preparing for spring. Even though it's far away from right now, we're planning for things much later right now. So in a way, we're almost thinking much farther ahead right now, if that makes sense. It just can be a little bit uh, difficult to adjust to, I think, especially at first. Okay, so besides the sun entering Capricorn on this winter solstice, we also have the moon entering Leo. So this is kind of nice. I think this might soften this change a little bit. The moon goes into Leo, which is kind of a happy sign, happy-go-lucky, very outgoing and warm. So it does bring a little bit of energy to the mix. I think this is really nice too, for those who celebrate Christmas, right? Just leading up to it, that we're feeling kind of outgoing and energetic, and very expressive at this time. Leo is also definitely like a family-oriented sign, so I think this is a really great dynamic for if we are spending time with family around this time here. Okay, and then the sun, excuse me, the moon will stay in Leo for the next 2 days here. So let's go forward to December 22nd. Moon is of course still in Leo. So we're continuing to feel that warm, energetic vibe, enjoying spending time with family, enjoying, the kind of abundance around this time of year. Again, for those who celebrate the holidays of this time of year. Um, but that's the main theme I really see. I think that's really nice having the moon in Leo there. I do just want to mention that Venus, as I mentioned before, it has gone retrograde and it's approaching Pluto. So this is a very different energy from the Leo moon. There is that focus on Leo moon, which is so warm and fun, but then we also have 4 planets in Capricorn, including Venus retrograde approaching Pluto. So there is that heaviness there as well, especially again in terms of how we support ourselves financially. Also, our obligations with other people, whether those be contractual or maybe just more emotional in nature. How do our relationships work for us? How are we being supported, or how are we supporting other people? What is the dynamic there? Are we obligating ourselves to commitments that are worth our while, basically? All these things kind of come into question now. So this is, excuse me, this is a lot more of a serious or challenging aspect to revisit or to make changes with right before Christmas. Um, Again, for those of us who celebrate it. So that is one thing as well. I mean, again, going back to the Leo Moon, I really like that placement. It does soften things a bit, but I think there are kind of more challenging themes going on in the background. Venus retrograde approaching Pluto is a more long-term aspect that's really applying to this whole week. So we may feel really kind of fun and vibrant Tuesday through Thursday most of this week with the moon in Leo, but at the same time, there's these more kind of challenging aspects going on in the background, and basically they're challenging because they are elements of change. They're requiring change from us. So just wanted to mention that. Oh, and also real quick, it's also challenging because the areas that they're requiring change in are very fundamental. It's requiring change to our foundations, and so that can be a bit jarring, a bit difficult to adjust to because Pluto, excuse me, Venus is approaching Pluto in Capricorn. Capricorn generally represents things that are very solid, the foundation or the structure to things. And so if there's this change in the foundation or the structure, it can be even alarming or shocking at times. But again, it's all for the name of evolution and for becoming better, evolving, adapting. Let's go forward to December 23rd. Moon is still in Leo, so a lot of the same dynamics here. Um, there is a little bit of a change going into Thursday, the 23rd, because although Venus is still retrograde approaching Pluto and Moon is still in Leo, the Moon briefly enters this quincunx aspect with, yes, with Neptune at 20 degrees of Pisces, and then Venus, Pluto, and even Mercury, in these kind of mid to latter degrees of Capricorn. So it is kind of a loose conjunction, but or a loose loose yod. Yod is what I meant to say. There's a yod between the Moon, Neptune, and then Venus, Pluto, and Mercury. So this would bring about a situation on Thursday that is very bittersweet. So there's this kind of difficult situation, this problem or this awkward set of circumstances that is it's very challenging in nature because there is it's almost like a problem that has no solution whatsoever. Fortunately, the moon is the one initiating this aspect, so it's really just going to apply to the 23rd. But it is an awkward situation nonetheless. I do, I would anticipate some kind of problem or some kind of level of dysfunction. The reason why it's bittersweet is because there's a loose sextile between Neptune and these three planets in Capricorn: Venus, Pluto, and Mercury. So that's what's so weird about this aspect, this three-way yod aspect, is because um, it is very challenging, very problematic, very difficult or awkward or stressful. But at the same time, there's this like silver lining to it where uh, I don't know how to say it. It's bittersweet in nature. There's some things going on that are very harmonious in nature, but then there's also this overwhelming awkwardness or challenge to it. And I did touch on this, but there's almost no solution. I think with this type of aspect, you kind of just have to sit back and enjoy the show, maybe just observe it, maybe be a little bit detached from it all, because it's a problem that just doesn't really have an answer, typically speaking. So I mean, you have to pretty much do what you can and then just forget the rest because you're not gonna fix this one. You're not gonna solve it. It's basically impossible. The Moon in Leo cannot possibly satisfy these planets in Capricorn or the Neptune in Pisces. They're just all too different from one another. Leo is just so unlike Capricorn and Pisces. These energies cannot integrate. So we're mixing a bunch of energies on Thursday that cannot mix. So there will be just a level of dysfunction that cannot be solved or remedied. And so again, my answer is just to sit back, enjoy the show. Try not to let it overwhelm you. It will be over soon. Even by the 24th, this will be already dissipating here. That's a nice segue. Let's go forward to December 24th. So, Moon enters Virgo, first of all. Here where I am, Eastern Standard Time, Moon enters Virgo about midday. So there is a change there. Now, I did say I liked Moon in Leo, but I like the Moon in Virgo as well in this circumstance because as soon as the moon, pretty much as soon as the moon enters Virgo, it will trine the sun. So this provides this really strong stabilizing energy, not only because it is a trine, so the moon and sun are in agreement. There's this ease to things, this easygoingness, this kind of strength to the vibe that we feel very stable, very structured. But also, this is an Earth trine as well. So, sun is in Capricorn, moon is in Virgo. These are two very stable, practical signs. Excuse me. So yeah, I do really, really like this, especially before the holiday, that there's this groundedness and this practicality, and that we are feeling kind of strong in where we stand. Now, of course, we still have Venus retrograde approaching Pluto, so there's these changes on the horizon or in the background here. But as for the short term immediate circumstances of the 24th, I think we are generally feeling very stable, very practical, kind of logical. Now, Earth, it's very earthy on this day. Earth is the heaviest element, so it can be kind of dense or heavy at times, but it's also very grounding. Um, Grounding, and I think it's excellent too before a holiday because Earth is very sensual, and so if we are enjoying good food or maybe gift giving pretty soon, then these are all kind of more physical pursuits. So I think having this heavy sensuality and even a little bit more of a materialistic side to this earthy energy, I think that could make things really enjoyable around this time of year. Okay, and then we also have this big aspect, which is Saturn. Saturn at 11 degrees squaring Uranus at 11 degrees Taurus. Saturn at 11 degrees Aquarius, Uranus at 11 degrees Taurus. Now, this is kind of a big deal because these are two slow planets. They're two outer planets. So, outer planets rarely aspect one another. It's rare that we have an aspect like this. So there would be an immense change. Now, this is a a square aspect. So square aspects are always a little bit anxious, stressful, but they're also very energetic. They require change. And with these planets involved, this change would be very much global or societal. It would require change of our society. So it could be economic. Uranus and Taurus is bringing about a lot of change and instability with our finances at this time. Not only personally, but also on an economic level. I think that's pretty obvious. And Saturn in Aquarius is bringing about a lot of restriction to society, especially with like online restriction with expression of ideas or information. So there's almost this clash between the two. There could be information which brings about economic change, or maybe economic change which brings about restrictions on our freedom with online access or what we express online. Um, Also, how there's been this literal restriction on groups assembling since Saturn has been in Aquarius as well. So there could be some kind of new development in these areas as well. Um, so basically, problematic or difficult situations which require change involving our online activity, but also our economic status or our finances, how we support ourselves in commodities, resources, what we value. All of these things are changing dramatically at this time, and this will be especially marked by the 24th. So definitely interesting, definitely something to pay attention to. And again, I just want to stress that this is global in nature. So we may experience this personally as well, but it's something that we're all going through together on a collective level, on a national level. So a lot of this might apply to government as well. There could be some dysfunction there. Um, okay, I think I said enough about that. Let's go forward to Saturday, December 25th. Venus finally makes the exact conjunction with Pluto at 25 degrees Capricorn. We also have Mars at 8 degrees Sagittarius, trine and Chiron at 8 degrees Aries, and then the moon continues to transit through Virgo. So, with Venus making this exact conjunction, this will sort of, that energy, that theme that I talked about in the background of the change with our relationships, obligations, our finances, this may come to a head, and it may be directly involved with the large change that happened just the day prior with, finances on a more global or societal level, the change to online activity or economics. That change may become much more personal by the 25th when we experience these changes in, again, our obligations, our commitments, how we support ourselves, etc. So all this is kind of coming into question right on the 25th, and this combines with a very different aspect, Mars trining Chiron in Aries. So it's really interesting when we combine all this together. So Mars and Sagittarius trine and Chiron would, to me, indicate us being very vocal about a lot of things that we're very passionate about. So this is a very passionate aspect, and we're very vocal about our wounds, so our traumas, things that we've experienced in our past. We're very expressive of, very communicative. This could lead to aggression. I could see this leading to protests. This is a trine aspect, so there is this kind of really solid, stable energy. It's a very confident aspect. So I think we're feeling very confident in our self-expression at this time. But I think with this aspect, we are much more focused on speaking than we are in listening. Because it's kind of a hit and miss aspect, especially with Chiron and Aries, because it can be, of course, good to be honest with who we are and to be transparent about where we've come from and about our traumas and to vocalize those so that we are understood. However, at the same time, I think if we are all doing this simultaneously and we're all becoming so loud about our emotional wounds, I think that can lead to a very unstable dynamic. And on the one hand, it can lead to better understanding between each other, being more vocal. But on the other hand, it can also come off as aggressive. It can also be destabilizing, especially depending on how it's expressed. It can come off maybe the wrong way. It can be too headstrong or too overbearing, too overly emotional. So it can bring understanding, but it can also bring confrontation or aggressive circumstances. And a lot of it does have to do with protests, I think. So So this is a mixed bag for sure. It's very outgoing, very energetic. So it's bringing this kind of fire to the table as well. And again, this is all at the same time that we're having these major transformations with our finances and how we support ourselves. So I do see some potential dysfunction when we really, think about the ramifications of combining all of what I just said into one day. Lastly, I think this is the silver lining for this day here, that Moon is in Virgo still. Again, I really like this. It's trining Mercury in Capricorn, right around midday Eastern Standard Time. And so throughout the day, it will also start to trine Venus and Pluto as well. So those changes with our obligations, relationships, finances will be stabilized to some degree by Moon in Virgo. So Moon in Virgo is supporting us being more analytical and organized with this change that's happening. So I think this is really excellent because Virgo is all about change, but it's about measured change. It's about gradual improvement and organizing things, making sense of things, measuring, analyzing. So I think this is a really, really nice aspect that without the Moon in Virgo, I think everything would just be total chaos on the 25th. But because the Moon is there, I think it lets us be a little bit more rational, analytical, and embrace this change that's happening in a way that is sort of organized and disciplined, intellectual even. Okay, that was a lot, I know, but yep, that's what I see for the 25th. Let's go forward to December 26th, Sunday. Moon enters Libra, so there's a dramatic change there. Let's just talk about that before I get ahead here. So, Moon in Libra would typically bring peace and balance. We'd be more focused on others during Moon's transit through Libra. However, the Moon, as soon as it enters Libra, it begins to square the Sun at 5 degrees Capricorn. So there's this sort of clash there. We're already gearing up for the quarter moon, and we will actually have a quarter moon on the same day, Sunday the 26th, at 5 degrees Libra. So suddenly there's this sort of challenging aspect. It's more stressful. I think maybe the ramifications of these recent changes that happened on Friday and Saturday will really sort of permeate and begin to, spread out and really affect things by Sunday, if that makes sense. So that's where the stress will begin more so. This is a quarter moon, and it's a third quarter moon, so we're really rethinking everything. We're really this is a very action oriented aspect, but it's also very philosophical. So we're kind of stepping back from things and really contemplating, really feeling things, really digesting what has kind of just occurred and applying it to especially our social relationships. Moon in Libra is very socially oriented. It's also, especially when it aspects the Sun and Capricorn like this, I think it's very strategic, thinks before it acts. So Sunday is this interesting blend of feeling very action oriented, feeling restless, feeling a little bit stressed or anxious, and wanting to be very productive. But at the same time, I think the productivity is much in our own heads. Like we are being productive in the sense that we're mostly just integrating what's happening, all this change that's happening right now, and applying it to our current and our future situations, applying it to our aspirations or our goals, applying it to our relationships with other people. How do these recent changes affect all of that, and where do we stand in all of that? So it's a lot of different energies kind of all clashing together. It's like I think this is a very scattered energy. But the silver lining or the positive side would be change, basically. Change is very difficult, but we are getting rid of what's not working anymore in order to incorporate new, better ways of being, new situations that we can manifest. So the better, it depends on your own chart as well. If you have a lot of fixed signs in your chart, this will be very difficult for you because change is generally difficult for you. But if you have a lot of mutable or maybe cardinal signs in your chart, then you'll be more readily able to adapt to this changing set of circumstances that's happening right now. If you especially have a lot of cardinal signs in your chart, so that'd be Libra, Capricorn, Aries, or Cancer, this change will affect you very personally because the Sun is in the cardinal sign of Capricorn. Moon is in Libra. So if you have signs in Capricorn, Aries, Cancer, or Libra, this change will be very personal to you. Your own personal circumstances will be what will be changing sort of dramatically at this time. Oh, also, this kind of added stress will apply to you specifically, but the benefit of being, productive or changing things, reorienting yourself at this time will also be more dramatic for you as well. And lastly, before I wrap this up, on Sunday the 26th, we also have Mercury at 20 degrees Capricorn, and it does make a sextile to Neptune at 20 degrees Pisces. So, okay, this is a sextile. It's not the most strong or overwhelming aspect in the world, but this is really nice, I think. Sextile is a harmonious aspect because it combines two energies that are complementary in nature. Mercury in Capricorn is very rational, very kind of serious or pragmatic, very structured, but then it's making this aspect with Neptune in Pisces, which is more emotional, more sensitive, more creative, more spiritual. So there's this interesting blend on Sunday of wanting to be very concrete in our thinking and communication, but also being receptive to what is strange or unknown, being receptive to emotion or intuitive messages as well. So it is kind of a strange mix, but it does bring a little bit of harmonious energy into the mix here. I think we are maybe being intuitive with our goal setting, or maybe very structured in our creative endeavors, if that makes sense. I know that's a little vague, but I hope that makes sense for you guys. That's generally what I see for this week. So this week to me seems tumultuous. It seems like a lot of change is happening, especially with how we support ourselves with our foundations. But again, even though change is hard to embrace, it is good because it allows us to evolve, basically. Stay tuned next week. Jupiter enters Pisces. That's a pretty big deal because it is one of the more outer planets, relatively speaking, and that will change things quite a bit. And Jupiter only changes signs about once a year, so that is a pretty big deal. And we've also got a lot more aspects next week as well. So I hope that helps you guys. If you want to contact me, if you'd like a reading or have any questions, I'd be happy to help. You can email me at manic.mercurian@gmail.com. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.